All right, everyone, welcome back to the Rundown. I'm joined today by Brendan and super producer TiVo. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good.
Doing great.
We survived 2022. My God, I didn't know if we would, but here we are. We're still employed, thankfully. We work for a good company. Shout out to everyone else who's on permanent vacation. Hey,
we're here.
Plenty of time to digest things on YouTube and prepare for the next bull run. So that's a far-reaching silver lining, and that's about as close as we're going to get in the world today, at least as far as I know. Do we have any more positive news that we can deliver, kick the year off right?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So speaking of everybody on permanent vacation, hopefully they didn't miss out on some gains. So a lot of good price action this week across the board. So stock market was up. Bitcoin this week, 5 days, up 3%, maybe giving some back. And then the winner of the week would be Litecoin, 8% in 5 days. Last 6 months, 54%. I don't know if you guys had that on your bingo card of Litecoin leading us out the bear market, but just positive price action across the board.
Did. I didn't.
It was in the newsletter, wasn't it? Like we had Litecoin in the newsletter not too long ago.
Yeah, we had it as one of our coin of the week picks. We were saying, hey, look at the long potential here. And look at it now. Look at it now, right? Our child has grown up.
Time to take some profits and kick it out of the house.
So plug to the newsletter, sign up, cryptnation.com, get our newsletter. But overall, what are you feeling? Is this they call it the Santa Claus rally, is like the last 3 days of the year, first two of the new year. So that was positive in the stock market. Bitcoin seems to have followed. You know, what are you guys feeling?
You know, I think we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, right? Jay Powell was speaking this morning, and a lot of people thought that he was going to be a little bit more bullish than he was. And he kind of came out and didn't really say much. And so that got people a little bit, I don't want to say concerned, but it set them back a little bit. People have really high expectations moving into this year, especially because of what we saw last year. It was a really tough year for everything. It doesn't matter if you were a stock, doesn't matter if you were a crypto, doesn't matter if you were anything. Everything got hammered last year, especially compared to the US dollar. And so it was a tough one. But I think sentiment is getting better. Things are getting stronger. We are starting to see consolidation on a lot of major assets. And, you know, I hope it holds on, but I'm not sure if we're at the turning point right now. And if we have reached the turning point, I don't think we're going to see a parabolic reversal. There's a lot of people out there that think we're going to see this V-shaped recovery in the next maybe couple of months. I don't think it's that easy. I think it'll be a more gradual process and a more like slow transition back to normality.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. I think maybe things are ticking up right now simply because no one's left to sell, really. There's that factor. And now that it's the new year, funds have budgets that they need to deploy. So it's really the beginning of the accumulation phase, in my opinion. I think there was a lot of, people that had to close their positions last year and book those losses for their funds, as well as, their personal stuff. And they needed to wait a little while to get back in. And I think now that we're, in the second week of January, some people are just picking up their allocations again for long-term holding. But it's not, as Brendan said, like going to be a crazy V-shaped recovery. There's still an entire year to stretch out for all this. So I think it's going to be slow and steady. And in a bear market, when you see prices rise like this, like you just take profits. It's the next resistance level. It's kind of automatic. And until we see one of these stronger resistance levels break and retest and hold, I think it's going to be a lot more chop.
Yeah. Well, budgets are in focus. So a lot of cuts this week. Obviously, the media has grasped onto the FTX contagion and black eye on crypto. So they love to dig into this negativity, but Coinbase is having a pretty large layoff. I know Genesis also having some layoffs. So is that concerning to you guys? Or you just kind of a testament of like, yeah, there was a lot of growth there and they're probably got to trim some of the fat?
No, it's normal. I mean, when you are in a bull run, you have to like 2 or 3x your staff and customer service just to be able to keep up with tickets. I mean, Coinbase, before they were hiring, not even before they were hiring, like while they were hiring last year, they were up to like 2-week wait times for responses. And it was just crazy. So now when they're experiencing, 5% or 10% of that volume, it just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint to hold on to all those extra people for another 2 to 3 years before they see that kind of influx of demand again.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the core infrastructure of these projects that are laying people off right now are a lot of that's not coming from anything that's core, right? We're looking at what is being set back, and 9 times out of 10, these people are laying off non-essential personnel. And what they're doing is, in a lot of senses, they're stepping back from a lot of the marketing. You look at what happens to a lot of these projects in a bull market, and they are taking money by the dump truck and bringing it into their marketing team and just saying, let's absolutely flood the market. And now what they're doing is saying, let's take a little bit more of an intelligent approach. Let's step back on the marketing. Let's focus on foundational, fundamental improvements, and let's work our way up from there. And so that's all that this is for, really, I would say even like a lot of tech. A lot of tech is just saying, hey, let's take a step back, focus on what really matters, and get rid of some of the non-essentials. And then as the market begins to recover again, then we can start adding back in a lot of those extra things that we were able to do in the bull market. So I think a lot of it does come down to different kinds of like marketing advancements, things of that nature. I mean, we saw crypto companies getting ads in the Super Bowl, buying different kinds of stadiums, buying sports teams, becoming the main sponsors of all these crazy events. And now we're not seeing that anymore, but a lot of these, places are still around. So I think it just comes down to marketing. We aren't seeing a lot of these exchanges do 50% layoffs. A lot of it's usually around 20%. So they get rid of, again, a few people here and there. I think a lot of it is just like front-facing positions, if that makes sense.
I was going to say, but what isn't talked about is how many companies are still hiring.
Yeah.
Just about every company in crypto is still looking for more talent in one department or another, and especially in development. It is nearly impossible for a company to find the developers they're looking for because they're in such high demand right now. So while marketing may be cooling off, development is still at an all-time high. If you can code Solidity or learn to code Solidity, you're never making less than $250K a year again.
Yeah. Pete, this is funny because we had someone come to us a couple of months ago. I don't know if you remember this, but it was during one of our live streams, and we had a parent come to us and say, hey, my kid's going into school. He wants to get into tech, and he wants to program. Like, what's the avenue to do that with blockchain? Should they go into like programming or this or that? And we had that exact answer that you just said. Like, learn Solidity, learn how to code it, and you'll never make below $200,000 again because the demand still is high. I was just looking at a list of like DevOps, software engineering, Solidity engineering, like all these positions. And there are hundreds of them that are getting listed every day. If you go and you filter by the last 24 hours on LinkedIn for like a very niche specific title of say like DevOps, then it's hundreds. If you search by even like security, then it's in the thousands. So there's just an abundant amount or such an abundant need for developers in the space. And if anything, that need is just getting stronger. A lot of people have this belief that like, oh, AI is going to get rid of the need for developers or coding or all that. Couldn't be further from the truth. Maybe in some distant future when we have a crazy Skynet like AI, but not right now. There's thousands, if not tens and tens of thousands of jobs, even in this bear market, that need to be filled.
Yep.
So it's funny you brought up the marketing part, Brendan, because I was literally thinking about that today. I was the NFL playoffs are about to start, and I remembered last year. I mean, how many crypto Super Bowl commercials there were? I mean, I know Coinbase had one. FTX obviously had the Larry David, Tom Brady one. What was the Matt Damon one where he was like comparing
Crypto.com.
Matt Damon was comparing crypto investors to Magellan and going to the moon. I mean, over under is going to be one crypto commercial for this Super Bowl, or really 0.5, like maybe Coinbase, but I don't even know. I think it might be a year off.
What should we do if we did a Super Bowl commercial?
I think it should have to involve you, Bryce, and a lot of pizza. Maybe a throne made out of pizza. And you with all your belts. I was going to
go with a foam party in Miami, but I guess that's cool too.
I like that. I can produce that. I can make that happen.
I think we need to utilize all of your belts, though. All the belts in your background.
Okay, so there you go. So foam party, and I'll be the referee, and then there's pizza, Bryce, a tag team against, I don't know, I want to throw out the old school reference, the KY Jelly wrestling match in the basement. I don't know if you guys ever seen Old School.
I was going to go in a completely different direction with zero KY Jelly. I would say like Bryce and I have one tag team. We'll have like Bit Boy and like Crypto Crow's the other tag team. Crypto Crow's like 7 feet tall, so that'd be hilarious to see him just like choke slam me. It'd be ridiculous.
Is Crow really
all for the ratings?
Is Crow really 7 feet or like a tall guy?
He's pretty close. He's an enormous human being.
I would not have known that.
I didn't either until I met him in Miami, and I was like, "Hey," but he's really, really nice. Thankfully.
Well, if you've never seen Old School, Brendan, I got to give you a homework assignment. You have to go watch that.
We have seen Old School, Brendan. I just don't want to be in a KY Jelly match against Bit Boy. But if you want to throw in, some of the old WWE divas, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm friends with Ashley Dana Brooke, so we could. And she lives in Miami, so we can recruit her.
We could do that too.
Yeah, we can recruit her. She's great.
And the whole theme of it will be blockchain education.
Yeah,
it won't look like that on screen, but just at the bottom it would be like
subliminally
learn about blockchain.
Subliminal messaging. We'll subliminally
exactly, just like the old Carl's Jr. commercials.
When this commercial gets made, sell everything because that's the next top of the next bullet. I've seen on Twitter CoffeeZilla and a lot of people in the NFT community just absolutely punching at Logan Paul for Crypto Zoo. I know this has been a long saga. I feel like it's picked up steam recently with Logan Paul inviting CoffeeZilla onto his podcast, Impulsive, and obviously CoffeeZilla saying you should come on my show, vice versa. Brendan, I know you know a little bit about this. Could you break down that, because it feels like it's at some type of fever pitch here?
Yeah. So in the peak of the NFT run that we had, Logan Paul basically came out, said, I have this revolutionary project. It's going to change everything. I put my life and my soul into it. And one of them, because he created a couple of them, but one of the big ones that he created was Crypto Zoo. And what it was just these stock, basic, bland images. And a lot of people said that he stole these images. Like they weren't even, he didn't even have the rights to them. And he just blended them together. So maybe you'd get like a giraffe with like an elephant trunk that was like copy pasted onto its face or something like that. And so you got just these wild animals that you could merge into one. And the drama behind it is that it never really went anywhere. He never used it for anything. The whole project just kind of failed and just became stagnant. And the debate was, if you looked at Logan Paul's history and like the Discord channels and stuff, it was just irrelevant. He was non-existent. Half the stuff that was claimed and promised never happened. And then CoffeeZilla came out and kind of exposed that and brought on a lot of these developers. And they were like, we weren't being paid. He was just kind of like going through the motions of this whole thing. And Logan responded with a video basically saying, yeah, everyone I hired was like known criminals. And he thought that was going to defend himself, but it just brought even more backlash because his whole response video, which I've heard he's tried to retract since he came out with it, but it looked awful. His entire argument was like, you're taking the world of criminals, all these criminals that I hired to trust this, people who are known scammers. And it just made it look like he was even more of a scam, right? Because he was basically just saying, yeah, I knew all these people were scammers. I knew that they all had criminal records, and that's why I brought them on. So I can't be at fault. It's all these criminals that I hired. And so it's just one thing to another. It's basically an NFT project that he shilled to his audience. It went nowhere. Tons of like what looks to be criminal activity involved. And it just keeps getting worse for him. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he got a pig. He thought it was a miniature pig. He got it, and it was like found abandoned, like starving in a field the other day or something like that. And that came out right on top of this. So now people are getting on him for animal abuse. People are getting him for financial scams. He can't win right now.
I mean, Pizza, I know you're a big Crypto Zoo guy.
Something we say in the community often is every dollar is a vote of power. So be careful of who you empower in the world. And if you want to be the guy who's empowering Logan Paul, you deserve to lose all your money. Plain and simple. You're the worst. So if you fell for this scam, you got what you asked for, and I have zero sympathy for you.
I will say, like another general rule of thumb in crypto is that, especially for NFT projects, if an influencer is backing it or behind it, don't go anywhere near it. Don't touch it. It doesn't matter if they're a singer. It doesn't matter if they're an artist. It doesn't matter, like whatever. Like sometimes artists are okay, but for the most part, if it's some sort of like movie star or YouTuber or whatever, millennial, don't go anywhere near the thing. They never, ever work out. And maybe there's the 1% chance that it does, but it's just not worth the risk at all. I think the only person that ever had anything successful with them would maybe be like Gary Vee. He might be the only influencer who's done NFTs well, but I can't think of another one that has.
Yeah, you're right. And Gary Vee is successful because his whole thing is about actually helping people and making the world better, as opposed to just doing a bunch of stupid shit to attract attention to himself, like so many of these other celebrities and YouTubers and things like that.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Another thing that I tracked this week was from another influencer, one of the biggest in the world, the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, had a clip that basically went viral, I think, on crypto Twitter. So the guest that he had is I believe he's some type of kind of global research guy. He kind of had an opinion on everything. I listened to the episode. It was really interesting, but and give him credit, he gives his takes and is unapologetic about them. But the crypto community was not happy about how he gave his take on Bitcoin. So I'm going to play that for you guys right now, and we'll get your take on it.
There's no intrinsic value to this asset. And now it's starting to be priced appropriately. So it has what's Bitcoin at? 16,000? It has another 17,000 to go down.
Duh, really?
Yeah, there's no intrinsic value to this product. The people who really like crypto are convinced that it's the currency of the future and that a decentralized ledger is the way to go, and that anything that is controlled by a government entity is by definition a negative, and if it's done by the private sector freely, it will be better. And that's just not how currency works. Because the whole idea of economic activity is that there's expansion, which means you need more currency to lubricate and manage that expansion. If currency is locked in at a specific number, you get monetary inflation, and that is one of the fastest ways to destroy an economic model.
I'll say this much. Bitcoin does have intrinsic value. If he really understood what money is, and that's a storage of energy, it would make a lot more sense. But if he's looking at it in terms of a currency just to exchange and stuff, he actually does have some good points. And he brings up something I was actually thinking to myself the other night as I was wandering around my house, unable to sleep at 3 a.m. And I was saying, if Bitcoin really became the currency of everything, like there's only, so many sats in the world. And, Bitcoin would eventually have to fork to inflate its supply to like 21 trillion just to have enough sats to like circulate around for all the transactions. And they could, just do a token split right there on chain to fix that and create more units if it really were to gain global adoption. So Bitcoin in its form today, as he's talking about, he makes some valid points, but he doesn't understand the grand vision of what's being built here. And he doesn't understand the value of trustless networks versus trust in a system that has done nothing but exploit and steal value from 99% of the world. So as a defender of that system, in my mind, he has zero credibility.
Yeah, I think he gave a straw man argument with a common misconception that every cryptocurrency is supposed to be a currency. And I guess the name cryptocurrency is now misleading. We've talked about this before, but a better way to refer to cryptocurrency is more as crypto assets now. Because what you see with all of these projects, all of these altcoins that have been developed, is that each one of them typically has a specific purpose and use case. They have a mission that they're working towards, whether it's cloud computing, whether it's data storage, transferring, energy management, actual money transfer, smart contracts, decentralized application, privacy, Web3 gaming. The list goes on for forever. A lot of these projects have specific functionality, and the overgeneralization that they are all supposed to be this one world currency is just wrong. The large majority of cryptocurrencies don't want to be a one world currency, and they're not capable of it. Now, there are ones out there that are, but again, Bitcoin, I think he's right in the sense that Bitcoin is not capable in its current state. Like Pizza said, it's not capable. It doesn't have the throughput. It just doesn't have the capabilities. It would need to have the supply increased a lot. It would need to become a lot more efficient in order to run anything like that. So yeah, there are issues, but I think you can make the same argument about so many other different forms of assets that we would call like a traditional currency. Like what you look at the dollar, it maybe had intrinsic value until it was taken off the gold standard in the 70s. And ever since it's deflated by something like 96% in a matter of like 40 years. So how are we going to look at that and say that that has intrinsic value, but this doesn't? And I mean, even looking at older versions of fiat, look at older versions of the US dollar. And that's what I would compare Bitcoin to. It's like an older version of the US dollar. You go back and you have a dollar bill or a coin from the 90s, from like the early 90s, early mid 90s. We're not using that as a currency. A lot of places probably won't even take it as a currency anymore. You know, if you have a coin from 1910 and it's a dollar coin from then, you try to go give that to someone at your local photo shop or store, and they're going to be like, what even is this? Is this like some coin that you got from like a pirates convention?
It's a huge collectible too.
It's a collectible,
yeah, exactly.
And it's the first form of what we now know as the US dollar. It's at this point, it's art. It's a piece of history. And I see Bitcoin very similarly in that way, where no, I don't think it's going to be used as this one world currency, but I think it'll be like what the 1910 dollar coin is, or whatever, to what the dollar is today. People will look at that and be like, oh, that's a rare piece of history because it's one of the first iterations of its kind, or something along those lines.
Clip that rant, TiVo. That was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the only pushback I would say is I love, it was a great analogy, but if you're saying you're comparing it to like a 1910 coin, it's valuable because of its history, but that's it. So is it like, do you want to elaborate
There's
more?
There's a little more to it. I mean,
yeah,
it's not completely irrelevant yet, but if you look back in 100 years, I'm not so sure that Bitcoin's going to be there over something like Ethereum. I bet you there still will be people that use Bitcoin. The network will still exist. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the idea of it as a currency for the entire world to use doesn't work in its current state, but that doesn't mean improvements can't be made.
You ever try to use a $2 bill at like a store?
No, I keep them all for good luck.
You get the weirdest look when you try and use that type of dollar.
Yeah. But he also comes from a very Western-centric point of view versus, the Japanese, their whole thing isn't growth, it's stability. Yeah. Which, for a society that's been around for thousands of years, maybe we could learn a thing or two from how they operate. They seem to have existed a lot better than a lot of other places in the world.
Yeah, I think the biggest flaw with the American opinion is that so often we get caught up in our worldview and what our culture perceives as correct that we ignore every other culture's input right? We ignore what every other culture could be doing, how it could impact these different societies. And we see that a lot with DeFi, right? People go to DeFi, and I've given this example to Pete's before and to people in Crypt Nation, but they say DeFi could never be applicable to me when I can go to Wells Fargo and do banking. It's like, well, congratulations. You're in the 1% of people in the world that can go to Wells Fargo and have a bank account and get access to like the best first world financial system like ever in all of history. So congratulations, you are able to do that, but most of the world isn't. And so then that's where we look at things like DeFi and we say this is useful to all the people who don't have access to a first world banking system and a 700 or 800 credit score. And so I think the same kind of example goes here.
And Wells Fargo has just fined a record amount of like $3.7 billion for exploiting those people and stealing their money. So yeah, there's definitely, we can do better.
Yeah, there's flaws in everything, right? There's flaws in everything and nothing's perfect, but to act like the system that we have in place today is so far superior to what blockchain offers, it's a little bit ignorant. I think it's a little bit one-sided and definitely a bit biased.
We always try to do better each week. Great conversation, fellas. I always appreciate you coming by, and we'll be back next week with more rundown.